David, you ready to give a quick intro for us, please?
Yeah. Do you want to go through any technicalities?
Oh, everybody's muting themselves like I have asked, so we're all good to go. If you want to talk, just hit the space bar or you mute yourself and you can ask Chris questions. We're going to switch from Chris's phone to her computer, back to her phone, and pray for this all works.
Pray.
All right. Well, welcome to our latest Zoom and Share. These have been very popular. We've been very happy to do this. And it gives us a chance to meet and greet with the splendid instructing staff that traditionally goes to and today we're going to work with Christine Knapp. Christine lives up near, she lives in Colorado, up in the mountains there. And Christine is one of our most splendid sculptors. And I don't know if any of you have been to her website, but you really should go look. Because she does some really small, beautiful stuff. But then she's a girl, but she does big stuff. She does some really big stuff that's really great. And she's really an excellent sculptor. And she's going to show us around her studio today and give us some background. So, Christine, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you for that. What you see right now is a view of my studio, which I'll show you in a little bit more depth. I've been taking advantage of quarantine time. It's been a blessing in a way because I haven't had a chance to really paint like I want to. I started off as a painter, and then sculpture took over, and then the COVID thing happened, and now I'm painting again. And it's not because I'm not going to sculpt again. It's just because I'm taking advantage of the time. Many of you guys have probably experienced this. A lot of the shows have been canceled. One of the biggest sculpture shows in the country is in Loveland, about 45 minutes away from us. And usually I'm preparing for that this time of the year. But this year that's been canceled. I have sculpture walks in Sioux Falls. That's been canceled. But Wyoming has not been hit hard at all by this virus. And so I am going to deliver 2 monumental pieces to Wyoming in a week and a half now. So that's a good thing. But let me give you a little bit of a background for those of you who don't know me. I come from a non-traditional art background. I was a nurse for 42 years. Most of that was in the emergency room. And so I'm not trained, college trained in art, but I am workshop trained, and I've been mentored by a number of fantastic mentors over the years. And all those have been very in-depth classes that I've gotten from them. And so I just wanted to let those of you know who think that you have to have a college education to be successful in art. Number one, you don't have to be. And number two, isn't it all about what we really want to do with ourselves? I mean, all of us artists have this innate desire to create. It's something that you don't even have a choice on. You just do it because you want to, because it makes you happy, and you have to, because if you don't, you're not going to be happy. And so with that being said, I'm going to challenge all of you. Some of you have tried sculpture, some of you haven't, but I'm going to challenge all of you to consider adding sculpture to your artistic toolbox because it makes you a better painter. And I found that my painting now is coming much easier after all these years of not painting. It's coming much easier now because of all my sculpture background. And the reason I say that is, and I'll explain more later, is that you kind of get the idea of what your subject is about from the inside out. You sense the masses, you sense the skeletal forms, you sense the very nature and the way your creature or human moves just because you've had to study it from all angles. And it's so, so valuable. So I'm going to take you on a tour here. Hang on just a minute. I'm going to unmute myself from my computer and go to my phone. Just bear with me.
Yeah, you did it. You're good. Oh, there she is.
There. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So this is my studio.
Remember to move slowly.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to make everybody car sick or motion sick. This is where I was just setting. Okay, and this is a view outside of my studio window. I'll show you a little bit more of that later. This, what you see here, is my clay warmer. And what that is I keep hearing myself on the computer.
You're okay. Keep on going.
This is restaurant grade lights that produce heat. They use it to keep food warm. And what I do is I use it to keep my clay warm. Now, there are other ways of doing this. You can warm up your clay in a microwave or a sunny window. But this works well for me. Okay. So lots and lots of books, supplies. I'll do this slowly. Here's some of my recent quarantine paintings. The top two, I think, are done. The bottom one, not sure yet. And here is a new sculpture that I just started that I intended to be the quick draw for SKB. And as you can see, it's very rough. And what it's going to be is an Abert squirrel, which is a small squirrel that's indigenous to the Rocky Mountain areas of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and southern Wyoming. It's a little bit different in that it has tufted ears, and maybe you can see, here's pictures of the actual creature right there on my computer. I use a lot of my photo references from my computer anymore because you can zoom in and get all the different angles and so on, and keep working. Here's some of my tools. And here is a sculpture that I took down just so you could see the armature. This is a piece that I completed at a workshop in Las Vegas last March. And this is a Cirque du Soleil performer. And he posed in this position because the instructor wanted to make sure that we had the most challenging position possible. Meaning nobody sees upraised arms like this, and the tilt of the head, and it's all designed to challenge you. And it was a great workshop, and what they did is they had us build this figure from the skeleton up. So that's the way sculpture works. You start from the inside out. Do you have to do a detailed skeleton? No, but you have to do sort of a rough version and build out from that. And this armature, which you see here, goes into the back of this guy. Hang on. Like so.
Ouch.
And the reason for that is this is soft clay. And unless you had some way of holding it up with the metal armature that's on the inside, it wouldn't stay like this. Now this armature can be reused. And so it's just a typical armature that you would see on a 3D piece. Also, too, I wanted to show you on my workspace here. It's kind of gruesome. Michelle, you probably know what it is. I found this on one of my hikes. Yes, it is a real and gruesome dead deer's leg. And that's the back leg. Here is the front leg. The reason for that is what perfect reference material. 3D, the real animal right there, right? So also I wanted to show you a little bit more about this piece here that I just started. Those are real pine cones. And I will be molding I will be including that into the piece. And what I'll do is I'll take some wax and cover the pine cones with wax and refine the spaces like right here in between to make them look more like the pine cones resting on each other. That makes this piece really, really authentic because these are the very pine cones that this squirrel would be eating. So if you'll notice, my reference material for this is all laid out. That's a squirrel's skull, squirrel's skeleton, plus various other references that I have over there on the computer. In the background, you're going to see lots of reference books, a bathroom, yes. And this space to me is a dream space because it's about 700 square feet and it's bigger than the basement that I used to work in at my Ohio home. And before I worked in the basement, I worked in a small bedroom of the Ohio home. So 10-foot tall ceilings and 700 square feet, I feel like I'm in heaven. Not to say that you can't create things in a small bedroom or in a garage, but it just helps to have a little bit more space, but you don't have to. And the other big inspiration, this is my husband, Bill, some of you know him, and it's just now starting to rain. This is the view that we have. I wish you could smell the rain. It's amazing right now. He's running out to pull in his archery targets. So I'll let him go. And then this is our dog, Boo. So I'm going to go inside now and give you a more formal presentation on how you can make your own sculptures, okay? So I'm going to unmute this, or mute it, I guess.
Turn it off. You need to unmute your computer now.
Got it.
There you go.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to run you through a few things and give you an idea of how I do what I do, and hopefully encourage you into maybe doing some of this for yourself, okay? So hang on here just a moment, and we'll start with the first image.
See if I taught her well, she can do it on the first time. Don't forget to share your screen then.
I got to share my screen. Hang on, Anthony, I'm sorry. I'm having trouble sharing my screen, but I'm getting there. There we go.
Hey, Wade. I was hit share. Yes, can you hear me?
I hit share, and I'm going to click on
The Finder one.
the Finder one. Yes, I am. And I'm going to share that. Can you still see me?
You clicked on the wrong one.
Yep.
Exit
It says
that.
I'm screen sharing.
Yeah, you're on the wrong picture.
Oh, boy.
You need to exit screen share.
All right.
No. Hit screen share. Now does the picture on the other screen open?
It is open, yes.
Click on the share button, share screen on Zoom again. Find a little picture of that picture. It should be that little drawing, your little checkpoint, checklist.
Yes.
Click on that and then hit share.
Okay.
It's
Did
the,
that?
let's see if it works. Don't highlight the
See
text.
it?
Don't highlight the text. Click on the next one below. And now hit the tab, spacebar, see if it works. Nope. Hold on.
Nope.
Exit screen share. Sorry about this, guys. We tried this before. She had it before.
Yeah, it's all right. So stop share.
Okay, now do it again and click on the guy. Screen share. And click on David this time. The little picture of David. And hit share. There we go.
Excellent. Okay. I know that's kind of a risque picture to some people, but we'll go back to that in a second. I found this online a few months ago, and I thought, isn't this something that we can all relate to? First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is something that a lot of artists, the self-talk that goes on in people's heads is amazing. And this goes on in a lot of artists' heads, including mine sometime. I might not use these words, but it goes through your mind like, oh, I'm not good enough, or this isn't good enough, or I don't know if I can do this. So you have to fight all these little mental demons to get to where you want to go, right? And so, and then in the end you decide, oh, wow, this is awesome. Well, and then sometimes after you get to this is awesome, and you look at it months later, you see only the flaws. That's not in there. But it's kind of a funny little thing. And I just wanted to share that because all of us artists go through that. All people go through that. And it's something that we all share and we just recognize, and we know that we have to just deal with it. Recognize it, deal with it, and move on. So this next picture is, it was a milestone for me. I had a great teacher in high school. I was an art major in high school. My teacher knew that I was going in the nurses training, and he was trying to talk me out of it, but I was the oldest of 5, and I was doing what I thought was the right thing by setting an example for my younger brothers and sisters and getting into a responsible job. And so he, in his class in high school, had us do drawings of all the most important artistic creations throughout history. And so I ended up doing drawings of buildings in Italy and France and sculptures, paintings. We did pastiches of those, meaning we copied them, right? And just to get the idea of what the original artist decided to create. And in this case, Michelangelo was something that really inspired me. He was one of my historic heroes, if you will. And so I never thought I would actually get to see this statue in real life. But 7 years ago, I did. We went to Florence, Italy, into the Uffizi Gallery, and there was Michelangelo. I didn't expect this, but I was standing there crying, looking at this, because I thought, wow, this is real. And the power of this sculpture is just so overwhelming. I wasn't the only one crying. There were other people too, but I was crying for different reasons than they were. So I just wanted to share that with you. He obviously is very well versed on human anatomy. And the fact that David is not just standing there, but his leg is shifted to one side, everything is kind of in a relaxed but confident mode. This sculpture has such power to it. And Michelangelo, as you all know, was also a painter. Look at this painting. You can, I mean, the masses underneath that clothing there is palpable. And that's because he understands them. He understands human anatomy. Look at the foreshortening of that elbow. Look how 3D this painting looks in comparison to the figures behind the Holy Family, where yes, they're still painted in a very realistic mode, but they're flattened on purpose because of course he wants your eyes to look at the Holy Family. But look at what happens when he takes his knowledge of sculpture and translates it into painting. He's just a genius to me. So I have a few other historic heroes. This is Malvina Hoffman. Now she was born in 1885, died in 1966. And she was a woman way ahead of her time. She was doing monumental works. I mean, some of them weren't monumental, but lots of sculpture at a time when women were encouraged to be housewives and nothing more. And she decided that that was not for her. And so she kept persisting, and she eventually created this whole body of work where she traveled all over the world depicting the different races of man. And this is just a small sampling. And this was exhibited in the Chicago Field Museum for many, many years. Most of it's taken down now, but they still have some of them there. But look at the degree of realism. Look at how authentically she represented her subjects. And I have Everett Kinsler to thank for this. He told me about her when we met years ago at one of the SKB conferences. And he said, when he found out I was a sculptor, he said, you've got to get all of the books. She wrote 3 books. And I got all of them, and I read her story in all the books and all the trials and tribulations she went through. Just an amazing woman. So Malvina Hoffman, if you get a chance and you're interested in sculpture, or if you're just interested in someone persevering to do what they really believe in, these are great books to read. Okay, another, unfortunately now historic figure, because she just passed away this past April, is Glenna Goodacre. This is the Vietnam Women's Memorial, and it's in Washington, D.C. And no, she did not die from COVID. It was natural causes. But she's a Texas woman, born and raised, and she did go to college to study painting. She was interested in sculpture, but her professors in college told her that she had absolutely zero aptitude for it. And so she thought, okay. And so she went on about a business. She graduated from college. A friend of hers who was a florist gave her a little bit of wax, and she said, why don't you try playing with this just for fun? Well, she did, and she loved it. And she kept going and going. And eventually she started sculpting. And then she got to the point where she got a name for herself. And this is probably one of the most iconic things she created. 2 Vietnam nurses helping a wounded veteran. It's a powerful, powerful bronze. It is a little bit larger than life. I think it's life and a half. And I don't know if any of you have seen it in real life. I know I have, and I just think it's amazing. Amazing when you consider that one of her own teachers told her that she had no aptitude for sculpture. So a heroine, to be sure. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I'll share a little bit about my beginnings. This is my first sculpture. It's not that big, probably about, I'd say 10 inches tall. Completed it in 1995. And I just thought I would try it out. Now, this was made with oil-based clay. And some of you know Carol Grande. I took this to her Montana studio, and I said, well, what do you think? Do you think I can keep going with this? And she said, yeah. And so I spent a week with her in Montana. We rode horses, and I thought I was in heaven. And really the biggest draw was I went to Montana to hang out with Carol Grande. and ride horses, but then I came back fully in love with sculpture, and the rest is history. It just took over everything. And at this time, my paintings were in galleries, but this was just so much more fulfilling to me. So from that small piece, I'm going to show you my largest piece, and that's this one right here. This is, the elk is 10 foot tall, the doe or the cow elk. And those are her twin calves. And this is in a traffic roundabout in Golden, Colorado. And to the right of this picture is a residential complex. To the left of the picture is an open field where there's an actual resident herd of elk. And so the people in this complex wanted a bronze that would celebrate the herd of elk. And they wanted a different bronze. There's lots of elk monuments out there, but they wanted something that was different. And so they chose a cow elk with her calves because it's just not been done before. And as far as we can tell, it's not been done anywhere in the world. So this was a big honor for me. This was years in the making. And the people still stay in touch with me. This was put up last April. I've been told that occasionally now you see masks on the elk fawns, just because people are celebrating or just commiserating with the quarantine. And sometimes in the holidays, I was told this last Christmas they put a wreath on one of them, a Christmas wreath. It's kind of a powerful thing. Sculpture can reach people in so many different ways. Painting can too, but I find sculpture to be more powerful for me personally. This is another view of that. There's the resident elk herd in the background with a few condos in the distance. And this is how it all started. This is the piece that I presented to the committee. Whenever you do a public sculpture, there's always a committee that you have to deal with, and you have to make everybody happy on that committee. And so this is called a maquette, which means it's a small study of your proposed monument. And the maquette itself is only about 16 inches high by 17 inches long. And so that was approved by the committee. And from that, I took this maquette to a professional point-up service, meaning a professional service that enlarges it. And what they do is they scan this all the way around, because they have the most magnificent 3D scanners these days. And so they scanned it all the way around and made it into a foam kind of reproduction, which had to be refined again, because whenever you enlarge something, you get distortions and you lose details and all that. And then I covered that foam in clay. And I'll show you how that was done a little bit later with another piece. But I just wanted you to see how it's done, because to sculpt a piece large from the beginning is virtually impossible. Even people like Michelangelo, they always made a small study first to work out all the details, and then you can enlarge it. This is another bigger piece, life-size doe, twin fawns again, but these are mule deer. And this is in the client's home. He put it in the entryway of his driveway, and this is in Aspen, Colorado. I made these 3 separate pieces so that the client could have some ownership in it. I very much like working with my clients so they feel like they're part of this. And he arranged these in the way that he wanted them to be. This is another piece at the same home. This is the entryway next to his front door. He told me what he wanted in terms of positioning, and I made it happen. Now, I know there's a lot of artists out there who don't agree with that. They'll say, well, you know, it should be the artist's vision. To me, it's teamwork. I'm working with my client to make their vision come true. And there's no greater satisfaction. It's the best feeling in the world to know that you made their dream come true with your abilities. And in the end, they have a big smile on their face, and they feel like they're part of it. It's just the greatest feeling in the world. Another bear, I tend to do lots of bears because people like bears. People commission me to do them. And they're just a really intriguing animal. They're comical, they're smart, and they happen to be around where we live, at least black bears. So this is another black bear. And this was also, the position was picked by the client. He said, I want a bear with his arm upraised so that when people pull into my driveway, he's welcoming them. And so this bear stands 5'9" tall, and it is now situated at the driveway of this big historic ranch outside Estes Park that was the historic home of a man named Enos Mills, who was one of the founders of Estes Park. He was a naturalist. And the fox that's there happens to be one of our resident foxes that we're not supposed to feed. Don't tell anybody, but we do. This is another.
I know that.
Yeah, don't tell anybody, because really, the Division of Wildlife will come by and they'll give us a big fine. It's happened to neighbors of ours. So this is my first big piece, and this was done for a lady in Dayton, Ohio, Kettering to be specific. It's a life-size white-tailed deer with her fawn, and the image on the top is the Maquette, a small version, and I want to say that one is, oh, here it is. It's 5 inches tall, the small version, but the big version is 21.5 inches tall. Totally life-size. So this is where this client put it. She owns a bed and breakfast in Kettering, and she fashioned a little waterfall underneath it, all kinds of landscaping behind it. And she keeps reposting this image on Facebook over and over again because that's how happy she is with it. And she stays in touch with me. You kind of build I'm sure all of you painters have done this too. You establish a rapport with your clients, you get repeat business from them. And even if you don't get repeat business from them, you know that you've done something special for them in their lives, where they look at your artwork and it reminds them of something that's dear to them. In her case, she also had a say in the positioning of things. I tweaked it, I made suggestions, I made it better, but this was her vision. And
hey, Chris,
just a real neat lady.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Can you go back to the previous image?
Yes. That one?
Yeah. The macaque above, you, excuse me, when you develop this like this to show to the client to get approval, what kind of material is that?
That's oil-based clay.
Oil-based clay.
Yes.
And then over the surface, what are you doing? Are you painting and then adding a glaze?
Oh, no. I will show them the original in oil-based clay. And so the clay is typically like a bone color for me. That's my favorite. And I'll just say to them, this is what it's going to look like. And they have their choice of patinas, meaning colors that they can put on it. And a lot of people.
But are you putting that on the patina? How are you putting that patina on that oil-based clay?
It's not. What happens is there's a process called the lost wax casting process. And once the clay is approved and done, then a mold is made. And I'll show you a mold later in this presentation.
All right.
And then they pour wax into that mold, and it goes through 17 steps approximately. Different foundries have different numbers of steps. To where it gets to bronze. And then when it's at bronze, then they sandblast the whole bronze, and it has the color of a bright, shiny copper penny. And then they put a blowtorch all over it to open the pores of the metal. And then they apply different chemicals that will produce predictable colors based on their experience.
Okay.
And that's the patina.
Cool.
There's a link to my website at the end of this presentation, and I have a video of that actual patina process at the foundry. I don't do the patinas here because it's, oh my goodness, there's a lot of carcinogenic chemicals that are involved. You need big ventilator hoods. And I'm thinking, you know, patina application is an art form unto itself. And so what I do is I am there when the first patina is applied, and I tell the patineurs what I want. And if it needs to be altered as we go along, then I'll tell them that. I'll say, no, you know, this is too light or this is too dark. I want a different color. And so I can be there for the first one. And then after the first one, because all these are limited editions, after the first one, then they'll just keep redoing that unless I tell them I want a different patina.
Okay.
And this patina you see right here, that's called traditional. It's also called French brown or cowboy brown. It still has some of the suggestions of the original animal, but it allows the bronze metal to show through. A lot of people prefer this, some do not. This is that same sculpture. I'm going to say this many, many times. When you're a sculptor, you're the head of a team, your personal art team. And for me, my team begins at home in that I have a husband who's willing to help install things and help me drive things to different locations and so forth. This was another casting of the same sculpture. This is a limited edition of 15. And this is on the main street of Lyons, the little mountain town that we live 20 minutes outside of. This also, there's a casting of this in a large botanical garden, which is the largest sculpture park in the United States, and that's in Hawaii. Okay, life-size caribou. This was also created for that botanical gardens in Hawaii. This was photographed outside of Art Castings of Colorado in Loveland, just prior to them shipping it to Hawaii after it was approved. And on this, there's a little bit of this is not traditional patina. You see a little bit of white on there, characteristic of caribou. That's just a different chemical that they sprayed on there to get that. Same sculpture in the setting in Hawaii. For some reason, they wanted a section in this tropical park to look like the Mount Denali area in Alaska. And to that end, they made mountains that kind of look like that mountain range there. And that was home for this caribou. Also in that same park is this. Life size of a moose that I did in the same general area as the caribou. And here's an overview of the entire section of that park. The only thing that gives it away as tropical is in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see some palm trees. And that way, you know, well, it's somewhere warm. So this park is called Na'ina. And it's, I forget how many acres big, but I feel very honored that she now has 3 of my bronzes in this park. And it's a destination on the island of Kauai for events, for people just to see the different flora and fauna of that island. It's just a big deal on that island. Okay, this is a sculpture that I created for a lady whose husband had recently passed away, and his big enjoyment in life was going to the Cubs baseball games. And so this client that I worked with was probably the most difficult client I have ever worked with. she made many visits to my studio. She lived, you know, maybe about 45 minutes away from us. And she had to approve every single thing that I did, right down to the folds of the clothing, the angle of the bat. I suggested putting a bear cub in there just because, I mean, it's Chicago, it's the Cubs. But you know, his hair on this little boy's head, everything had to be just so. And at that point I thought, wow, I don't know if I ever want to do another private commission again. But I found out that she was the exception to the rule. And in the end, she's pleased as can be with it. And that's the bronze in her backyard. Another commission I recently completed, these are all life-size. These are white-tailed deer being chased by a cougar. And it was this client's dream that she loves the predator-prey scenarios unfolding, because that's, let's face it, that's nature, right? And so this is the Maquette for that. These pieces, I'm not sure, I want to say they're probably about 11 inches tall, and the tallest tail that you see at the one deer. And we made them in all separate different sculptures so that the client can arrange them in the way that she wants. Now this is still in the foundry. Everything is slowed down because of COVID, and so we're running a little bit behind schedule, but it's going to be due to be delivered to the client's home. My guess is September-ish. But hang on here. Here's a close-up of the lion. It was a bit of a challenge, and this client gave me full reign to do whatever I wanted. They just had to approve the final clay. So this was a bit of a challenge in that I needed to show a lion leaping through the air, and this was my answer to it. He's leaping through, you know, brush, and this is a tree branch. And then, all right, so that's the Maquette. Here is the pointed up foam. And this is the result of them using the 3D scanners, and you can see how there's different slices and they just piece it all together. And this is what I have to work with. You know, look back to the details on this, and then look at the loss of detail here. Not to mention the fact that there are a few distortions here and there. And so there was a lot of work that's involved in getting that to the finished point where we can take it to the foundry and have it molded and have it start the lost wax casting process. And this particular foundry is about an hour and 15 minutes away from Du Bois. I know I mentioned it to my students before. It's called Eagle Bronze. They're in Lander, Wyoming, and they have done the absolute best enlargements I have ever seen. Right down to, you can see that this whole thing is on a wood platform with wheels on it so that I can roll it around in my studio and work on it more effectively. And that's my dog supervising the whole thing. All right, so there's the deer. They're finished there, pretty much, each on their own platforms. And then this is what happens to them when we get it ready to go to the foundry. A lot of artists hate this. To me, I don't mind it at all. You notice the tail is cut off, the ears are cut off, the antlers are cut off, because that's going to happen in the mold making process anyway. Those pieces are cut off and separate molds are made of them. So we live on these mountain dirt roads, and the lady in the right-hand side of the picture is the wife of the owner of the foundry. Her name is Bev Paddleford. She's a sculptor herself. And what we did is we took these clay pieces down our mountain, about 20 minutes it takes to get down, to their trailer. They put it in their trailer, air-conditioned trailer, and took it up to Lander, Wyoming, which is about I want to say a 4.5 hour drive. It gets there safely, and like I said, they're still working on it. But hopefully by September, it'll be done. Okay, now I'm going to move on to some of the smaller works I've done. Just some of you have seen some of these. The big point I want to make about this raven, other than the fact that it's life-size, is that the mirror that it's looking into is highly polished bronze. And so when that happens, it forms a mirror surface. And so the raven is actually looking into the mirror. And if you look over the top of the raven, you can see that he can see himself. This is one of my most popular small pieces, a little box turtle. It's only about 6.5 inches tall. It's a sold out edition at this point. And it did so well that I made another edition and kind of changed the positioning a little bit. These are all small tabletop pieces. This was created for a man in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It was to have been a maquette for the entryway for his home. And just before I got approval for it, he and his wife got a divorce, and so that was the end of the big bronze. But I do have the maquette, and the maquette is one casting short of selling out. This is a piece, brand new, just finished a couple of months ago. I did for a doctor, an ER doctor that I used to work with. He wanted to celebrate his wife's wedding, with their wedding, where they use calla lilies and they're crazy about hummingbirds. And so I created this for them. And now they have this enduring piece. They're thrilled with it. They, again, were very involved with the creation of it. This is one of the few pieces I did for myself. I've been horse crazy since the moment I can remember. And those are among the first things that I drew. And so it's called Joie De Vivre. My multilingual husband helped me think of the title of that one since he knows some French, meaning joy of life. Polar bears inspired by some of our many trips to Alaska. And this, even though it's white, is a patina. And the stone surface that it's on is called travertine. For anyone interested, I can put you in touch with a stone manufacturer in San Diego that has the best prices of anybody. And they will, you just send them the template of what you want your base to look like. They'll make it, ship it to the foundry, and there you have it. This is another piece that I did at the Las Vegas workshop that I attended last year. Another Cirque du Soleil model. She was actually hanging from silks in the ceiling in this studio. And she could only maintain that pose for about a minute, if that. It was up to each one of us to think of something to make it like more realistic. I didn't want her hanging from silks. I wanted her to do something more natural. So in this case, it's called Pearl of the Ocean, and it's up to you to decide, is the pearl the woman or the oysters that she's going after? Another bear. Like I said, you know, bears are popular. I think you've seen this one, David.
Yep. Looks great.
Thank you. This is a piece called Missing Him. It's a result of a photo shoot in South Dakota. It's called Artist Ride. There's a lot of historical reenactors that go to this photo shoot. It lasts, I think 3 to 4 days. And people pose in different positions and you get to photograph them. And whenever I photograph my subjects, I'm walking all the way around them. I mean, let's face it, it's sculpture. You've got to do that, right? So, bless you.
Was that her?
This used to be a studio rabbit that I had, a little lop-eared rabbit, stayed with me for a number of years. And I decided, well, I'll just do something different. I just had the one rabbit, and it's kind of reminiscent of Andrew Denman's totem pieces, but I did this before I ever saw his totem pieces. I just like the idea of a vertical format and a little bit more stylized than what I usually do. But I like experimenting with different styles. all kinds of different ways of presenting things. And since the lop ear was a Siamese colored lop ear, that's why I made the ears darker and the feet darker. It's called a hair raising event. Pigs, you know, a lot of people don't like pigs. I think they're cute. And so I was trying to think of a way to make them cute. And Bill and I put our heads together. I decided to put them on books like this, so it tells a story. Much like painting, sculpture needs to tell a story too. And also like painting, you don't want to have the same texture all throughout your sculpture. You need to have areas where your eyes can glaze over it, and then areas where you want the emphasis to be sharper and deeper. So like the mother pig's eyes are just hollowed out sections. They're dark. And because they're dark, your eye goes there, right? And then the titles of the pieces, Bill and I put our heads together: Pig Latin, Pygmalion, and Pigtails. And so far it's been a successful piece, and I love seeing people smile at it. This was a piece that I originally designed for our son's wedding cake, to be a wedding cake topper. And you can't see it from this angle, but at a certain angle, the swans' necks, they're trumpeter swans, form a heart shape. And the one that I gave to them that went on their wedding cake, because bronze is heavy and pricey, I made out of Sculpey clay. And you can get Sculpey at any Michael's or craft store. And you just bake it in the oven and you can paint it. And that's what I gave them for their wedding cake. And because I kind of liked the concept of it, I made it into a bronze. And it's a bigger bronze. It's almost, I would say, 34 inches long. I've had other people purchase this as a commemoration, ironically, of their anniversaries, their wedding anniversaries. This was an experiment that I did where I actually did a casting of Bill's hands. And because I felt like mine were too skinny and bony, and I wanted something sturdy to hold this frog. And we happened to have a pet frog at the time. And so there's this material called alginate. Dentists use it to make castings of teeth for dentures, right? And it's kind of neat because it smells like vanilla ice cream. And what I did is I had him hold his hands in this alginate, and you have to hold it there until it forms for about 15 minutes. He wasn't much happy about that. And then pulled his hands out. I poured in plaster of Paris, took the alginate away, refined the plaster of Paris, and then sculpted the toad in my regular oil-based clay, and hence the finished piece. And it did pretty well. People were intrigued by the whole concept.
Hey, Christine.
Yes.
We have a chat question.
Go ahead.
From Marcy Berry. She wants
Okay.
to know if you supervise all of the patina colors on these small bronzes.
Yes, always. Even ones that are repeating the same patina that was done before. Patina, they're called patineurs. Those people generally aren't artists themselves. They're just following your directions. And I'm the quality control person. I'm the head of my team, right? And so before I let any piece of art out there, I'm going to make sure that it's put on exactly the way I want it. And because my foundry is 4.5 hours away in Lander, Wyoming, that's the foundry I use 95% now of the time. They send me email pictures or yeah, just pretty much, or there's like different videos they can send me showing me the patina all the way around, asking for my approval. And sometimes it's a back and forth situation where I'll say, no, that's not quite right, a little bit less of this or more of that. So yes, I am involved in all of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Not a problem. So as with you painters, the thing that makes your art authentic is that you're putting yourself into it. You're sharing your feelings and you're sharing your life experiences. That's what makes it authentic, right? So same way with sculpture. This picture, I want to say it was taken about 15 years ago now, yikes, was not taken in Africa. It was taken in a small town called Lebanon, Ohio. And this lady that lived in Lebanon, who used to live now close to where I live in Boulder, is passionate about cheetahs. And she would bring in cheetahs from Namibia and train them on her property in Lebanon, Ohio, to chase after balls. You see a ladder in the background. Well, that's attached to a machine where they stretch a big ball about the size of a double-sized basketball across her immense field. They would hit the button on the machine, and then it would retract the ball, and the cheetah would chase after it, so that artists like me, and I was just one of the artists there, could take pictures of a cheetah running and get all kinds of great motion pictures of cheetahs running. And they also were trained to be cat ambassadors. I know, Nancy, you're familiar with Catherine Helker. Unfortunately, I think she's in the throes of dementia now, but she was using these cats to be cat ambassadors to promote international awareness to the fact that these animals are in danger of being extinct. So I took that life experience and translated it into this bronze. And this bronze, I'm so honored to say this, was presented to the president of Namibia in the United Nations in New York shortly after I created it. Catherine Hilker was very involved with that, the lady who owns the cheetahs and trains them, in thanks for his conservation efforts in saving the cheetah in Namibia. And also another result of that whole experience is this one here. I call it looking to the future, because hopefully they will have a future. This, I have not created a lion sculpture yet, but I will. I talked with Guy Combs about this last year in Kenya. Although these were taken, this photograph was taken in South Africa. But this very image I use in art shows. It's a great conversation starter. And it's a way of sharing, again, my experiences with the clients. And those of them who have been to Africa, now they want to talk about Africa. Now they want to commission a piece of work that's African. Or maybe not immediately, but in the future. You just never know where these things go. At the very least, you're making a friend, or you're having a great conversation with someone. Personal experience, this is our grandson doing what boys do. He's looking at this frog in his hand through a magnifying glass, and he's surrounded by animals. He has a snake around his neck, the squirrel is obvious, and then there's a rabbit hidden in a hole on the other side of that tree trunk. Granddaughter, doing what she does. She's a snuggle bunny, and that's their dog. Okay, so I'm going to digress a little bit here and talk about inspirations and being willing to experiment. I've always been fond of animals, a lot of us are. And so I've always been intrigued by the way a little tiny animal, if you hold it in your cupped hands, will roll up into a ball. And I've taken a few college courses in art, and one was from a drawing professor, life drawing, and he kept emphasizing biomorphic shapes. And he said that those are some of the most appealing shapes that you can include into your art, meaning rounded. Okay, and so I started thinking about that, and I thought, well, what can I create in bronze that would that would show those two ideas, the biomorphic shapes and an animal curled up. And so I drew the circles, you can see the circles, and I came up with this rabbit and a little hare. And this is the bronze that resulted, called Hairball. And that was, that's part of a whole series of bronzes that I've done like that. So far I have 12 what I call animal wrappers in that series. And I'll share just a few more with you. Oh, this is another one, inspiration. So we went to Alaska. And on the plane ride back, you know how they have those little magazines that you can read on the flight. And this was in the magazine, this little owl. And I thought, wow, that could be neat as an animal wrapper. And so right there on the plane, I started figuring out different things that maybe I could do with it. I looked up to see what kind of owl it was so I could get the proper references. It's a boreal owl, and they're very small. And I even thought about some titles. You see, like ogling owl, who's there? You know, who knows? So this is the resulting bronze, and we ended up calling it Outrageous Owl. Here's some more animal wrappers. This one was another animal wrapper. This is the size of a basketball, and it was commissioned by the CEO of the Otterbox Corporation. Well, as you can imagine, they have tons of otter sculptures in their corporate headquarters in Fort Collins. So he had 2 basketball-size castings done, one for his office and one for another administrator at the corporate headquarters. And then he had 10 small versions made to give out as awards for the employees. So you never know where these things go. This is on the right, you see a small animal wrapper. They average about 4 to 4.5 inches tall. And this is the larger version. My foundry in Lander was just thrilled to death. They've been asking me to enlarge this one for many, many years. And I finally did it this year. And it was due to go to Sculpture Walk in Sioux Falls, and then COVID came along. So it'll go there next year. I haven't seen it in bronze yet because that's the finished clay version. And that's clay over foam that I have, you know, perfected the details in. Okay, now I'm thinking that one of the biggest and easiest, or one of the easiest ways that a painter can transition into sculpture is by doing reliefs. Reliefs aren't as easy as they look, but it might be a good way. And I've noticed it with some students to transition, because one of the most common mistakes I see with painters going into sculpture is that they just work on one side of the sculpture only, and they forget to keep turning it around and standing up and looking at it from above. Sculpture is a very physical art form. You're always moving. And so that's one of the biggest challenges I have with painters, is telling them, get up and move and look at it all over. So maybe if someone considers starting with a relief, such as this one, it might be helpful. Sometimes, you know, the flattening of shapes is a bit of a challenge, but I'm kind of thinking that it would help some people. This was inspired by a group of ravens we saw in Yellowstone, and this is very typical behavior for ravens. Actually, the raven with the berry in its mouth found a piece of broken jewelry on a parking lot, and all the other ravens were gathering around trying to take it from him, and I just decided I'll make it more friendly and make it a berry. It's called Den of Thieves. Another relief. This one is one of 3 different reliefs that are all 24 by 24, designed to be incorporated into front entryways, fireplace inserts, or just hung on the wall. And all bronze. It usually weighs about 30 pounds, so you have to put it in a nice sturdy stud or something in the wall. And what I did is I researched Native American textiles and incorporated that into the frame, and also researched Native American artifacts to make sure that the arrows and the arrowheads were authentic. This is a relief that I finished for a lady who lives in a very high-end suburb of Denver called Cherry Creek. And she lives in the historic home of a guy who in the mid-1800s brought the circus to Denver. And his last name was Tamman, and that's when he brought the circus to Denver. It was in 1908. And this went on the top of her front entryway. And like I said before, when you're a sculptor, you're the head of a team. And you also form partnerships, not only with your team members, but with other artists. This giant man next to me is my neighbor, who lives about, well, he lives exactly 1.25 miles up the mountain from me. And those doors there are doors that he designed. He's a musician by trade, but decided he didn't want to get involved with the drugs and alcohol, so he phased that out and started doing high-end doors for entry gates and front doors. And he asked me to design the relief in the top. This is a relief on steroids. This is a bookend, but it's kind of a 3D bookend, and it's another idea for those of you who just want to try this. You get the satisfaction of being somewhat 2D, but 3D at the same time. This relief is a full circle experience for me. This is the School of Nursing that I graduated from many years ago. And it's a replica of the school pin. Whenever a nurse graduates from her School of Nursing or college, they're given a gold pin, and everyone's unique to that school. And so I had to redesign it. This is 12 inches wide in diameter. And what I did is, so that I didn't have to painstakingly sculpt those letters myself, you can take your design to various numbers of companies who will do the lettering for you. You just show them what you want and where. They designed this little, on the left, this little plastic insert that I put my clay into with the lettering already there. And it made my job a lot easier. Also, as part of that pin, this hands holding a nurse's cap on the right, that's the nurse's cap that my school had. And that's another thing, it's phased out now, it's very old fashioned, but nurses used to wear those. Every school had their own school cap. Well, just 2 years ago, a nursing school in Stamford, Connecticut looked at my website and decided they wanted one of these for their school, and so that's their nursing cap on the left. And because most nurses at that time were female, it's starting to be 50-50 now. I used my own hands as a model, but I didn't cast them in Alginate like I did that first one. I just used them as a model. Okay, so now we're going to get down to the nuts and bolts of how we do this. This is how it all starts. You have a concept. You have a drawing, maybe. Sometimes I don't even start with the drawing. Sometimes I just start with a piece of clay and I just start fiddling around with it small, no armature even, and then I'll make it into the piece that I want. But in this case, this I used a lot when I taught classes at Shriner University in Texas. A lot of the kids there, they did horses, and so they needed to know the bony structure of the horse, okay? And then from there, we developed an armature pattern. And that is 3 wires. You have 1 wire that goes from the head across the back and into the tail, and then another wire that goes into one side of the legs, and then another wire into the other side of the legs, and it's all held together with, in this case, a piece of plumbing pipe. And you see how the wires closely follow the skeletal structure underneath. That way you can start with the horse in this position, but it doesn't have to stay in that position. You can bend it at the joint marks in any position that you want to make it the sculpture that you envision. And this is a sculpture that I used as a demo and showed the kids how you can have it do whatever you want. Another armature. Yes, that's my trusty dog, Boo. This is the beginning of a mountain lion sculpture. And I decided to point this one up myself. That's why you see the grid mark in the wood there, where I made a little small maquette. And I drew, just like you enlarge drawings and paintings. You know, you take your drawing, you put a grid on it, you put a grid on your larger canvas, and then you start pointing it up or enlarging it. That's the finished clay. I don't know why it did that. Is it small on your end?
No, it looks fine.
Okay. Well, that's the finished clay. And there's the finished bronze. Now, the best part about this is it was created for clients who I had never met in my life. They knew of my work from Facebook, of all things. And I thought they lived in Estes Park. They started conversing with me about my sculpture, and they wondered if I would be interested in doing a commission piece. And they gave me free rein. They just said, just create a mountain lion and its cubs. And so this is what I came up with. And I said, well, would you like me to show you the maquette in person, thinking they lived in Estes Park? And they said, well, yeah, of course. I found out they live in Paradise Valley, Utah. So that's like I don't know. I think it was a 9-hour drive, but well worth it. These are the clients, very happy. They're in Eagle Bronze in Lander, Wyoming, and they wanted to be there for the patina application so that they could have some say in it. They wanted a traditional patina, real neat couple, and they're the same couple that the piece I showed you earlier of the whitetail being chased by the mountain lion. Well, they commissioned me that one after this one. So yeah, one piece leads to another. This is a dog commission I just finished. There's the basic armature plumbing pipe that holds the aluminum wire up. Calipers that you see there. I had I had a photograph. I had brought the Yorkie to my studio, photographed it all the way around, all different views, had it enlarged to life size on the photographs, and then I drew my armature pattern in the photograph, and then I used my calipers that you see here in the middle of this picture to keep checking my measurements to make sure that it was precisely the same measurements as the actual Yorkie. Now this is helpful if you have a live animal that you can work on. Sometimes the animal's already deceased and you can't do that. But I also took measurements of the Yorkie too. This one's still in the foundry. It's that recent. That's midway through. This is how a bronze develops, or this is how a sculpture develops. Details, much like a painting again, are the last thing you put in. It's more about composition and general attitude and feeling before you put in any details. And then there's the finished one. There is an actual dog collar embedded in the clay, identical to the dog collar this dog wears. Right down to, you can't tell it's a heart shape, but there's a little heart-shaped a little tag there with his name that I wrote in clay in that heart. And if I decide to make other castings of this, then I'll just erase out that name and put in whatever name someone wants and customize the colors to to their particular Yorkie. More dog commissions. These are a little smaller than life. They're about I'd say about 3/4 life size. This clients there in Estes Park wanted to immortalize their dogs while they were still alive, and they're all Labradoodles. And it just shows you the wide variety of colors you can get with the patinas. And I wanted to show you detail this one because the fur textures in that were so much fun to do. I finished it out in a summer day, and I just took a little boxwood tool, and the clay was nice and soft, and just started playing with curls and fur, and it was a ton of fun to do. Getting close to the end here, the reason I'm showing you this is that this is a combination of patina applied in the foundry and acrylic paint that I applied in my own studio. And with that, I know you can't see all the details, but I put like little designs in the little girl's belt in acrylic paint. And then when it was all done, and then there was some details in the base and even her complexion and the beads on her dress. She's a little girl that I photographed in the Canyon du Chet. She was a little Navajo girl, and she was holding a kitten, so I just replaced it with a bear. You can combine, it's called polychrome. You can combine patina and paint, and then you lacquer it and you wax it over that, and it becomes permanent. There's the mold I was talking about, David. This is just a 2-part mold of the little baseball boy that I did. That's the maquette of it. Those little dimples you see all along the sides are called keys that help the mold fit together. And then it's just floppy. It's a floppy polyurethane material. And so because it is floppy, they put it in a plaster Paris mother mold. And that's what you see on the edges there. And then into that, wax is poured. And then it goes through many, many steps before it gets to bronze. Some of the tools that I use, you can create just about anything with these tools. You don't necessarily have to use armature wire. The squirrel that I showed you earlier didn't even need an armature wire. That's the clay that I typically use. I think it shows the best detail. It is kind of firm, so for some people that maybe have arthritic hands or just don't want to push the clay that much, there are softer versions of this, but it's an excellent, excellent oil-based clay. And last but not least, if you want to know more, go to my website, go into the section that says how to sculpt. I have an excellent webmaster. I believe his name is Anthony Kanata. And he put all those, or he's showing it to you right now. There's a series of 3 videos. One is showing patina application. There's another that shows the lost wax casting process. And there's another that shows me taking you start to finish, drawing to armature to finish clay on the horse I showed you. And then that little baseball boy, that shows you various steps there. So it's just a way of getting a better feel for things in much more detail. What I've given you today is just a very broad overview and hopefully a teaser. Any questions?
Chris, does any of your videos show how that reusable armature works?
No, but it's really just a matter of retrieving the armature from the foundry and peeling the clay off. And then you reuse the same clay. Sometimes, you know, there's a little dust and dirt in there, you know, from the whole mold making process. But you can keep reusing the clay. I recycle clay all the time. It's a good cost-saving measure. And, you know, you don't have to keep buying clay.
Okay, so the armature was my question. It doesn't unscrew out of that body. You just pull it out.
You pull it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Christine, I'm always interested in the way artists work, different artists. As a watercolor painter, I have a procedure that I follow from beginning to end. And especially with me anyway, it's very much involved with the very first initial steps. So I'm looking at the way you work. Because I'm a watercolor painter, I'm enthralled with sculpture and glass. You know, I love, because I don't do those, you know, and so it intrigues me with someone like you who's so good at it. And I wonder, the one that came up, I forget which, but it applies to any of them. How do you get a inspiration? What what is the very first thing you do? You get an idea for something, and what's the very first thing that you do once you get the germinal idea of doing a sculpture? What do you do?
It kind of depends on the complexity of that idea. Like those little animal wrapper pieces, I just started with the drawing, and then I started with a small lump of clay.
No, hold on.
Yeah.
You started with a drawing.
Yes.
Does that mean you had in a sketchbook or something like that, where you just start roughing things out real quickly and easily?
Yes. Well, or in the case of that owl that I showed you, the other animal wrapper, I just started drawing on the magazine thing there, because I thought, wow, that's a great idea. Let's start sketching some things out there. And then it was just like quick little things, and I took it home, and then I started messing with the clay.
Well, I was in the San Antonio Zoo quite a few years ago. I'm on the board of the Society of Animal Artists, and we had our show opening up down there. And when we do, they usually try to set up something at a local zoo. So we went to the local zoo, and one of the members was standing next to me, and I was there with my sketchbook. And there was a little antelope, I forget what the species was, a little delicate antelope. And I'm doing a sketch, and I saw her messing with something next to me. She wasn't drawing. And so after I got done with my sketch, I looked over. While I was sketching, she had taken Sculpey, and she made a little replica of what I was looking at and drawing. She made it out of Sculpey that she had all wrapped up in saran wrap in her pocket.
Yep. I like Sculpey. You can't get the details, but you can get the basic composition, and it holds up pretty well until you can get it in an oven and bake it. So yeah, there have been times when I've done that, but a lot of times I'm traveling, and it's hard to travel with clay because airlines think it's an explosive material. When it goes through the scanners, they think your clay is an explosive, what is C something?
Report.
Yeah, so I don't often travel with clay, even Sculpey. So I end up generally drawing out a sketch first, and then going home and doing lots of research, both from my own photographs and from other sources.
Cool.
Any other questions?
I do. It's Christine White.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi. I put it, good. I put it in the chat, but I'll just say it too. Thank you for your presentation, because this is, I know by now I should have researched a sculpture process, but hearing it from you in such an approachable and kind of insider way, it was just really insightful for me. And I think your work is just beautiful. Yeah.
I think your work is beautiful.
Oh.
And I think that I know that you could do this, and I think that you would find a dramatic effect that it would have on your paintings. Not that your paintings need to improve, but we're all evolving, right? Mm-hmm. And so you just, it's just another tool that you can add to your skill set. And Yeah, I think you'd really enjoy it. And don't feel bad about not researching this ahead of time, because we all learn in different ways. You might be an auditory learner. I know I'm an auditory learner. I learn best from people talking to me as opposed to me reading it. I learn best from people showing me as opposed to me reading. So no problem.
Yeah. Well, I am inspired. And a question I have for you is, like the Furball series, and now that we've had all this, time kind of to introspect over quarantine, what is next? Do you have another series brewing? Is there a near or long term, I guess, like area of excitement that's cooking in your, for yourself? And that's my question.
Yes, I do. It's been a vision of mine for a while now, and a lot of it's because of my foundry's encouragement to do that toad that you saw pointed up. It's pointed up to 36 inches tall. I'd like to do several of those and put them in some sort of a public park or a children's garden or maybe a children's hospital. I don't know. But that's definitely on my radar. Then the other thing is, once shows start opening up again, I get a lot of commissions from shows. And so I'm always open to them. I know a lot of artists are not open to that, but to me, it's being in the ER for many, many years, I'm used to a team approach. I like a team approach a lot. And so I like working with clients on commissions. So I'm open to commissions. That's always in the pipeline. And I'm enjoying painting more than ever before too. But that doesn't mean that I'm stopping sculpting. That means I'm going to do both.
Oh, that's exciting.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
All
Yeah.
right.
I just like to always hear what is brewing in artists whose work I love in their mind. So thank you.
There's one other one. I promised Guy Combs a lion sculpture, because lions are, you know this, Michelle, because lions are endangered now. Who would have guessed it? But they're endangered because the ranchers and the farmers in Africa are trying to protect their cattle. And in Africa, cattle is their sign of wealth and their security. They don't eat the wildlife there. They don't like the wildlife. I don't know, I don't understand, but they don't. And so they're killing the lions, and the lions are having a tough time. And so also in the pipeline, I'm going to do a lion sculpture that Guy can use as a fundraiser.
Awesome.
Cool. That's awesome.
Very cool.
Well, one of the things that I've always been fascinated by, again, because I'm not a sculptor, I love small sculptures, but because they're approachable and you can walk around them and stuff like that. But what I'm most impressed with is big stuff and big sculptures. And I love some of this big stuff that you've done that I'm just blown away by it, because getting from small and getting from idea to 10 feet tall, standing in the middle of a drive around in some other city, to me, that's pretty amazing. And so I'm really delighted that you showed some of these great big things that you do.
Well, thank you. It's all play, just like what you do with your watercolors. You're just having fun, right?
Oh yeah, it's lots of fun.
Yeah. So that's all I'm doing, is I'm having fun. And the bigger you get, the more impact you have on other people's lives. And that's really the best thank you I can get. More than the paycheck is just knowing that people are enjoying it.
Well, because I'm around so many artists, literally one day I thought about it and went through it. It's roughly about 1,000 artists that I know, pretty much, that I know them, because I don't know all their names, but I know what they do. And for years, I was always very impressed with sculptures and what they were doing and stuff. And I was always smaller stuff, but then I started seeing big stuff like this. And it was Kent Olberg that called me up, and he says, well, Rankin, I know you like that big stuff. I want to show you something. And he showed me a bull that he had done in his place down there in Texas. And I think the bull was like 22 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God, it was just enormous. And
You
it all-
know, I don't think I'd be willing to go that big because it means standing on a ladder and being worried about falling off of it.
yeah, he had a scaffolding that was built like a really humongous scaffolding. So, but I love that you showed that stuff, and I love seeing your process. And I know it was a very sexist thing for me to say that here you are a girl and you do big sculpture.
It's
But
not sexist.
But I'm really impressed with big sculpture. And
Well, thank you.
your small stuff, I've seen a lot of your images that Anthony has worked with on building your website and putting in your website. And the small stuff is just elegant, but then you see the big stuff and wow, it's just something else.
Thank you. Sorry about that phone in the background. It's a name unavailable.
Yeah. So, Chris, I've got a question for you. So, if I want to start doing some horses, so I've got some ideas for some different horses from Sandwash Basin. What size would you recommend? Like, what's the easiest size do you think to work when you're kind of starting out?
I can send you that armature pattern. I would say it's about no more than 11, 12 inches tall.
Okay.
But, you know, of course, you can have it rearing or kicking or doing all kinds of
Right.
things, or put it up on a base that would make it taller. It depends on how motivated you are to sell it. So it's generally easier to sell smaller things than bigger things because, especially these days, people are a little bit more cautious. So I would start out no more than 11, 12 inches.
Okay, yeah, and I've got a lot of anatomy books and all those skeletons. So if that's what you're talking about, I have those, and yeah, so
Well,
I'm
and
set
plus you're a vet, right? So
Well,
you know
yeah.
this stuff.
yeah, but it's good still to have something to measure against and work from. So, yeah. So if I don't get it started before, I'll get it started at SKB.
That sounds awesome. Looking forward to working with you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Looking forward to going this year. So
Well, thank you. We're looking forward to seeing everybody.
Just to
Thanks, Chris.
give you
Great.
guys a little update. All of you look to me like people that I have seen there before. Anybody here that's new? That's what I thought. I thought I'd all seen you before. But Anthony and I have been working with Pam now for more than a month.